My name is Elizabeth Hart. I manage the North American Green Roof Program for Tremco Incorporated. I'm passionate about green roofing and using them to heal urban environments and to heal humanity. When I was in college, I worked for several years in a medical clinic. I learned a lot about the patient experience during that time, but I never really understood how much the atmosphere of the healthcare facility can truly affect patient health outcomes until I stayed with a friend who was in the hospital. My closest friend was hit by a car and spent several weeks in ICU. His family and I literally slept in the waiting room for weeks because they didn't know if he was going to make it or not. It was the most stressful, depressing scene you can imagine. The noise, the fluorescent lighting, the grim outlook for so many people that were in there. The doctors and nurses did what they could, but it was just a pretty horrible scene to be in. Like most hospitals, the windows looked out onto ugly roofing and mechanical equipment, so you almost didn't even want to look out the window. Everywhere you looked was man-made objects, and the entire environment was just sterile. It has to be. And this is the scene that millions of people experience every day. But there was one place in this hospital where we could go to get away, and that was a very small garden just outside of the cafeteria. It had evergreens and flowers and little benches. It was a very simple green space, but everyone flocked there. Not just visitors of the patients like me, but also the patients themselves, those that could, just to take a deep breath and sit and watch the birds and butterflies and forget about whatever they were going through for a moment. And it wasn't just the patients and visitors. The nurses and doctors also came out to the garden during their breaks. Even inside the cafeteria, people sat at the tables next to the windows looking out onto the garden. Everyone wanted to be near it. It was such a sweet break from the scene inside that I don't know how we would have made it through that experience without a little bit of green space. When my friend was finally well enough, I began to take him in his wheelchair out to the garden. From the first day I brought him out there was an almost instant change in him. The moment we entered the garden, his spirits lifted, he would begin to relax, and he would let the scene distract him from his situation. When he was relaxed, he had less pain and less inflammation, which meant less drug intake and fewer side effects. He was in the hospital for many weeks, and it was the highlight of his day to go out there, and it had a tangible, measurable effect on his healing process. That little garden really had a profound effect on me, noticing how a small, simple green space can have such a deep effect on people and actually affect their healing process. From then on, I knew that whatever the scientific explanations may be, green spaces have the power to heal. For my degree, I studied phytoremediation, which is using plants to digest environmental pollution. Many plants and soil microbes have the capacity to filter and clean polluted wetlands, soils, and air just through their natural metabolic processes. They can sequester and digest or store much of what we consider to be environmental pollutants. This was my entrance into green roofing to help stop runoff and air pollution at the point source by reintroducing vegetation into urban areas rather than after it was left to run off and contaminate the waterways and soils. We do a ton of hospital work, so I spent a lot of time on roofs of healthcare facilities, and over the years I've noticed something familiar in almost all of them. Sterile, stressful environments for everybody inside, little to no green space outside, and endless windows looking out over ugly roofing and mechanical equipment. Hospitals are generally built in stages, so a window that used to look out over a courtyard ends up looking out over the roof of the new building, so they usually have an abundance of ugly window scenes. But this is also their unique advantage because they have so many spaces for green roofs and living walls. Remembering the experience of my friend, I began to wonder if there had been any research done showing a scientific connection between access to nature and the healing process. I not only found decades of studies making this connection, I also found that patients who only view man-made scenes had a measurably worse health outcome. I learned that a person only needs to view nature, such as through a window, to have a measurable effect on their health. They don't even need to go outside. So I'm starting to see this as a greater level of phytoremediation. Plants do not just heal the environment, they heal people. This information really inspired me to want to contribute to incorporating green spaces in healthcare and transform the experience of the building occupants. One of the leading researchers in the connection between nature and health is Roger Ulrich, PhD. Ulrich is a leading researcher in this field, and his studies and those he references demonstrate a direct connection between viewing nature and enhanced clinical outcomes. His research and that of many others show that health benefits occur within minutes of viewing nature, and patients need only look at nature through a window to realize these benefits. So let's talk about the research. Healthcare facilities and practitioners generally make decisions on various medical procedures and services based on credible scientific evidence of health outcomes. The evidence generally covers three measures. Those are clinical indicators, such as the length of the patient's stay, their blood pressure, occurrence of complications, and use of pain medication. And then there's also the subjective measures. So this would be the patient's emotional state and reported satisfaction with the healthcare procedure and the healthcare provider. And then there are the economic measures, which are the cost of patient care. So starting with the clinical indicators. Laboratory and clinical research shows that within 5 minutes of viewing nature, patients experience significant physical restoration. So this includes lower blood pressure, less muscle tension, and less use of strong narcotic pain medication, among other clinical factors. Patients who viewed nature compared to those who did not had shorter hospital stays and fewer complications with their procedures. In Ulrich's research, in contrast to views of man-made environments, views of vegetation elicited positive feelings in the patients, as well as reduced fear, anxiety, and sadness. Patients report pleasant distractions from stressful thoughts. Patients who can view nature during recovery also express greater satisfaction with the healthcare provider and overall quality of care. This is also true for the visitors and staff who can view nature in the hospital. The final measure in these criteria is the cost of patient care. Patients who view nature have shorter stays and fewer complications. This is a cost savings to both the patient and the facility. It would seem that the longer the patient is in the facility, the more money the hospital would make, but in fact the opposite is true. The first few days of the patient's stay is generally the most profitable due to the tests and procedures performed early in the visit. The longer they stay, for example, in dealing with a postoperative complication, the more expensive it is for the patient, and the more revenue is lost by the hospital that could have come from the next patient coming in and getting their tests and procedures. The best scenario for both parties is for the patient to undergo their procedure and leave the facility as quickly as they're able, and the next patient to come in and keep that process moving. Also, narcotic pain medication is very expensive to the patient with potentially dangerous side effects, and it's not very profitable to the provider either. Therefore, the use of less narcotic pain medication by patients who view nature is more economically beneficial to both parties. When patients have shorter stays, fewer complications, when they're more relaxed and they have a nice scene to view during recovery, they're more likely to choose that same healthcare facility in the future. Positive market identity is difficult for hospitals to achieve, and this is one way for them to do that, with all of the compounding benefits to the facility that comes with adding a green roof. It's well known that staff turnover is really high in healthcare facilities because it's a high-stress working environment. Similar to the reports of the patients, nurses and staff members also report a more relaxed and desirable scene when they can view nature. This can help hospitals to recruit and retain healthcare professionals. And the community loves green roofs because it's an interesting, sustainable feature whose benefits go beyond just the campus and into the community by contributing to air quality, providing pollinator habitat, and cooling the urban heat island effect. For this reason, green roofs are frequently featured in local newspapers and on news stations, and articles are published about them in healthcare publications. All of this helps the hospital maintain a positive market identity in a very competitive market. It can be really hard for hospitals to create and meet goals for environmental sustainability. They generally run 24 hours a day with enormous energy loads for lighting, air conditioning, and running the medical and mechanical equipment. It's hard to keep a tight building envelope because they have huge double doors all over the building, which is a challenge for maintaining air-conditioned spaces. Also, because of the need to keep sterile environments and all of the biohazards, they're extremely limited in their capacity for reusing and recycling. Their waste load is enormous with all of the necessity for single-use items, and they don't have a lot of opportunity for green space outside the building. It's hard enough to get sufficient parking, loading dock space, and emergency vehicle access. There's usually not much left for green spaces other than all the space on the roof and walls. So many of the sustainable features that make sense in other types of buildings just don't work for hospitals. But green roofing provides a unique and high-impact opportunity to directly and positively affect the patient experience, while also meeting multiple levels of sustainability without having to enter the building envelope. When they're designed, installed, and maintained correctly, green roofs have the potential to significantly extend the lifespan of a roof membrane system. The extended life of the membrane is one of the best known and most widely applicable financial returns on the investment of a green roof. By covering the entire roof with plants and soil and vegetated-free zones, you isolate the membrane from what causes it to fail. Ultraviolet rays from the sun accelerate aging of roof membranes. Also, when exposed to the elements, the roof will move around a lot. It gets hot during the day and expands, then it cools at night and contracts. This movement over the years causes weaknesses that eventually become tears. It pulls at the seams, it pulls at the flashing details, and this is where the leaks start to happen. Also, a lot of membrane damage is due to traffic on the roof, for example, to maintain the mechanical equipment. Foot traffic, tools, scrap nails, and other debris on the roof can cause abrasion and puncture the roof membrane. But all of these scenarios are virtually eliminated when you fully cover the roof with green. The membrane temperature beneath the soil remains stable, so it doesn't move around a lot. It's totally isolated from UV, and the opportunity for mechanical damage is almost eliminated. So roofs that are covered in green last a whole lot longer, sometimes double or triple what their lifespan would be when exposed. Hospitals usually run 24 hours a day, so there really is not a good time for patching and repairing and replacing the roofs. Roof work is extremely disruptive to the facility, with the noise, construction access through sterile environments, and especially the odors from the installation, which can be intolerable to building occupants. Having to close a section of the hospital, even for a few days, can have an enormous economic impact by loss of revenue, in addition to the cost of the new roof, and it can take weeks to complete a new roofing project. So the facilities managers really understand this. They're very familiar with their roofs and the huge expense of maintaining and replacing them and the endless headaches from patching and repairing. They are usually our biggest cheerleaders within the hospital system for adding green roofs because they understand that when a roof is isolated from what causes the damage, the facility will probably not have to deal with that roof again until after they retire. Hospitals often operate on extremely tight budgets. Decisions are generally made by first cost rather than cost over the long term. But hospitals are also unique facilities in that they have opportunities for private funding of the green roofs through donations and memorials. If the roofs are accessible to the public, they also provide beautiful platforms for fundraising and showing how the facility uses its funding in a way that maximizes the experience of the patient while doing what it can to contribute to the environment of its local community. Because hospitals are often built in stages, the new buildings are usually constructed in a manner that would allow for more floors to eventually be built onto the existing lower roofs. For this reason, we often find more than enough structural weight capacity to support green roofs on hospital buildings. And these are often the same roofs that are visible from the windows above. When you really look at how hospitals are built and the experience of the people inside, and their limited ability to contribute to sustainability within the building, green roofs are the natural solution. And this is why so many hospitals are choosing to do green roofs. Providence St. Mary is a hospital in eastern Washington which needed a new roof. The facility had been getting complaints for years about the ugly window views of roof membrane and mechanical equipment from dozens of patient and staff room windows. With their focus on meeting all the needs of all the patients, the Providence system recognized how much the scene affected their patients, and they wanted to do something about it. They needed a new roof, and they decided that at the same time they would add a green roof to improve the patient experience, as well as to meet sustainability goals within the hospital, including energy savings, stormwater management, heat island mitigation, and providing local habitat.
My name is Jason Rose, Director of Plant Operations for St. Mary's Hospital in Walla Walla, Washington. It's a 142-bed hospital, and what you're looking at right now is one of our green sustainability projects. We get really high temperatures in the Walla Walla area or southeastern Washington area. So one of the concerns with the ballasted roof is how do we actually mitigate some of that heat and also ensure the longevity of the roof. Initial investment on it is a commitment for a green roof. There's infrastructure requirements and irrigation, and then also getting all the materials onto the roof to do it. Where it was really intriguing is the typical 20-year lifespan of a ballasted roof. We'd be reoccurring this cost again, and it would again just be a ballasted roof. So there was an opportunity to look at more long-term sustainable approach, and is that a good investment of our dollars? We did have the dollars available, and so it seemed like a great decision at the time, and we're seeing the results of it right now.
There's a saying in environmental circles in healthcare that what is good for the earth is good for the patient. And it feels really good to me to know that the energy savings that we are realizing with this green roof are more than just financial savings. but they're environmental savings. My name is Linda Herbert, and I recently retired from nursing here at Providence St. Mary Medical Center, and I have stayed on part-time working as the co-chair of the Green Team, which is our hospital's sustainability effort. Before the green roof, what you would see when you looked out of your window was just rocks and concrete. Depending on the time of day, glaring sun coming in your window, which is problematic because of all of the heat coming up off of those rocks. The HVAC system could just not keep up with that heat, and people on this side of the hospital were very uncomfortable for that. And now what's out there is lush, it's colorful, it just speaks to a part of your soul that is hopeful.
Here we've got the nice big window with the green roof. It's not real beautiful right now, but give it a couple, 3 weeks and it just comes to life. And it's enjoyable, it's relaxing, but yeah, it's just fun to watch it grow. It's a lovely view.
It is something that the administration was excited for, not simply for a financial standpoint, but knowing that it was going to be of such value to the patients, their families, and to our staff. People don't expect beauty in a hospital, so it's been a really pleasant surprise for people when they come and they look out the window and they see this vegetative mat out here that changes in colors through the seasons. You know, it's beautiful when it's green, but also in the fall when it starts going into its dormancy and it becomes this deep, rich, reddish brown. It's lovely then. And I know that the staff really appreciates it too. One of my coworkers said the other day how much it means to her to be able to see the green roof out through the windows when she's inside for her 12-hour shift. It gives her a sense of connectedness with the outdoors during her work day. It is interesting to me to see how having something beautiful outside of their windows actually encourages a patient to see beyond their physicalness in their bed, which may be in pain or may have anxiety, to look out there and engage in a thing of beauty. It has to be calming, it has to be reassuring, and I'm really glad that we can do that for our patients.
As I began to dive more into the human-plant effect, I learned that this is not limited to just healthcare facilities. When children incorporate nature into their learning environments, their education outcomes are better. UC Davis Center for Nutrition in Schools found that garden-based learning for children enhances overall academic achievement. The metrics for this include improvement in self-esteem, social skills, and behavior. Incorporating nature into the learning process also allows for the integration of multiple subject areas in an interdisciplinary fashion to tie together subjects such as ecology, nutrition, and art. They also found that when students participate in creating or tending to vegetable gardens, it improves their knowledge of nutrition, food preferences, and consumption of fruits and vegetables. Activities in nature resulted in reduced negative emotions in the students, such as anger, fatigue, and sadness, as compared to similar activities in a human-made environment. According to the National Wildlife Federation, when students are involved in planning, building, and maintaining a wildlife habitat, they have increased comprehension, performance, and motivation in school. And again, it creates an interdisciplinary learning environment where multiple subjects can be synthesized and applied to real-life scenarios. Edison Language Academy is a school in California that wanted to incorporate as much green space as possible into the learning environment of their students. They also wanted to minimize their environmental footprint in greater Los Angeles. They added 5 green roofs to their new school, 4 of which the students could access and interact with. The gardens were designed by landscape architect Robin Carmichael, who is also the mother of a student attending the school. She created habitat gardens so that the students could experience ecology firsthand.
I'm Robin Carmichael. I work for Pamela Burton & Company, and we design the green roofs at Edison. The whole school from the beginning was meant to be designed to illustrate and exhibit sustainable measures in architecture. So the solar chimneys help with the natural ventilation system. There's no air conditioning, and the green roofs are part of that. They help with stormwater and they help with keeping the roofs cool. So this is one of the butterfly gardens. This is the red-orange butterfly garden. We have another one that's a blue-purple butterfly garden. This one includes different plants that provide not only food sources for adult butterflies, but also Asclepias, which is a food source for monarch caterpillars, and it's the only food source for monarch caterpillars. There are evergreen plants, there are deciduous plants, we have habitat, we've spotted a couple of hummingbirds today, so this garden seems to be successful. The school benefits from these roofs through outdoor education opportunities, which means taking lessons outside of the classroom, which is something we can do in Southern California year-round. They get to see the cycles of nature. I know that there were some monarch chrysalis where they got to watch them hatch, and then they got to see the butterflies flying around the campus. So to see nature in action is pretty great, and to see to have access to these types of spaces and hopefully someday learn about the sustainable benefits of them is great. It's definitely rewarding to see kids using the spaces that we designed for them and having access to these kinds of spaces with all the plants and all the birds and the butterflies, and you don't get that everywhere. Usually it's just a classroom inside a box, and to have a learning environment that's outside and full of bugs and dirt, it's great.
So I'm going to read a quote by the principal of Edison Language Academy. Her description of the student interaction with the gardens really demonstrates how much the students are affected by access to nature in their learning process and the multitude of subjects that green spaces can touch. Green roofs are regularly enjoyed as places to sit, read, have snacks, and engage in small group learning. Particularly wonderful this year is that one was planted with lots of milkweed and we had a monarch butterfly invasion. The students love seeing the caterpillars, chrysalises, and butterflies. Some of the caterpillars attached in all sorts of odd places around the campus, which led to some interesting discussions about natural selection and anxious wonderings and monitoring about whether the monarchs would survive or be eaten by birds. And it was magical seeing the monarchs drifting lazily around the campus on warm afternoons. Students also learned a lot about geography and animal migration as we studied what we call mariposas sin fronteras, butterflies without borders, particularly appropriate for a school community of many children of immigrants. We have so many opportunities all around us to use green roofs and living walls, not just for environmental sustainability and not just for economic sustainability, but to actively heal and help urban environments and to actively heal and help people. Every building has a roof, so with every single building, there's an opportunity to use the roof for an even higher purpose. I invite you, in whatever way you work with green roofs and living walls, to embrace that higher purpose. Create spaces that bring people closer to nature, and in doing so, transform the nature of our built environment.